today we're going to have two presentations. The first is going to be Zach Davis of Cast Iron Coding, our lead developer, and he'll be just walking through some of the major features of V7. And then we'll have a period for a Q&A after that. And then we'll have Dana Johnson, also from Cast Iron, speaking about some of the accessibility work that has gone into this release. So with that, I think we usually introduce some of the Manifold team at the beginning. If people want to just quickly say hello, I wanted to pass it over to my colleague, Christina Michael, who's really the mastermind of these community meetups.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, and yeah, the format of this meetup is a little bit different than other meetups. So we started doing these quarterly Manifold meetups last year as a response to community members who are using Manifold, who really wanted a forum through which they could connect with other users of Manifold and learn from how people are using them and using Manifold in their institutions, and answering common questions like trainings, funding, how Manifold's fitting into their institutions and what people are using with them. So we started the Manifold meetups to give the community an opportunity to meet up with each other and to see what other people are doing with the platform. So this meetup, we are dedicating to our version 7 release, as Eric mentioned, and we'll get a presentation about that and also about our accessibility work, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions. So it's more a showcase than it is getting to see what other people who are using Manifold are doing. So with that, I am Christina Michael, and I'm an assistant professor of English at Hostos Community College, and I work on Manifold with Eric in outreach and also on curriculum development and developing Manifold as a teaching platform. And I'll hand it over to Susan.
Hey everybody, I'm Susan Dorr. I'm the Associate Director at the University of Minnesota Press. My role in Manifold is really more administrative these days. The other faces, on the Zoom are the people that you'll see more in training and in marketing and outreach. And I am going to pass it over to Terrence, who's the next window next to me on Zoom.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Terrence Meyer. I'm the Manifold Digital Projects Editor at the University of Minnesota Press. I see a lot of familiar names and faces. It's great to see you all. And you probably encountered me because I, along with Robin Miller, do all the Manifold trainings. And we also co-authored the documentation together. And speaking of, I'll throw it over to Robin right now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Miller, and as Terrence mentioned, I do a lot of work on documentation and trainings. I'm an open educational technologist. I'm based out of the Graduate Center. I'm part of the CUNY Manifold team, where I support all 25 campuses of CUNY for all the project work on Manifold. And I'll hand it over to Matt Gold.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you all here today. I'm a faculty member in English and Digital Humanities at the CUNY Graduate Center, and with Doug, one of the co-PIs of Manifold, and just really excited to see you all here. And I will pass it over to Doug.
Thanks, Matt, and hi, everyone. As Matt said, he and I are co-PIs of Manifold, and one of the exciting things about this release is that so much of what we've put together for this release is in response to things the community has asked for and suggested, and we've just been really fortunate in developing Manifold to have such an engaged community that really, tells us ways that they could use Manifold and allows us to respond to that with development. And oh, is that everyone on the team who's here? That's everyone who's on my front row.
What about Zach?
Jojo too.
Oh, Zach, of
And
course.
Miriam.
He'll be speaking a lot.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Zach Davis. I am a majority partner at Cast Iron Coding, a web development firm in Portland, Oregon, and I am the technical lead on Manifold. Jojo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jojo Carlin. I am previously of the Graduate Center at CUNY, and I am now at NYU Libraries as the Digital Scholarship Specialist, where I've brought Manifold there. And I also will be drawing today's event, among other things. So if you're not following Manifold Scholar on Twitter, you should. And check out what's going on. I will pass it to Miriam.
Hi, my name is Miriam Nascimento. I am a PhD candidate in cultural anthropology at the Graduate Center. And since last semester, I am working with the Manifold team at the GC. And as part of Manifold, I've been promoting the use of this platform among CUNY faculty and graduate students. And I'll hand it over to
Yeah, I think that
Dana.
might
who's
be.
missing? Oh,
Dana.
okay, yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Dana Johnson. I am a front-end developer at Cast Iron Coding, which means I work on building Manifold, and I work in particular on the front end of it, so the part that you see and interact with.
All right. Yeah, with that, without further ado, we'll pass the mic back to Zach Davis, our technical lead on Manifold, with the segment we finally refer to as the razzle dazzle. So take it away, Zach.
Thanks, Eric. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of the new features in version 7. Some of these I think I've shown in design on previous community meetings, but maybe we'll go into a little bit more detail this time. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. All right. Can y'all see that okay? Okay, so right now I have GitHub up, and I just want to kind of give you a sense of the size of this version 7 release. You know, we, as of today, have 998 commits between version 6 and version 7. With 125,000 additions and 165,000 deletions to just over 3,200 files. I think we're going to have to find a way to get 2 more commits into this release so we can get a nice round number here on the commit count. But this was a really large release, and I won't be able to kind of do justice to all of the work that went into it. In 5 or 10 minutes, but we touched almost every part of the Manifold client application and many parts of the API. And so we're excited to wrap this up and get it behind us. And we hope you're excited to start using it. So I'll start by looking at, actually, before I get into it, I also want to say one more thing. I want to give just some credit to who worked on this release. Most of the work was done by 4 people on my team. Dana Johnson, who's on this call and you'll hear from in a second, kind of led the front end development. Lauren Davidson, who joined Cast Iron about a year ago. She was previously the assistant director of the Derek Bach Center for Teaching and Learning at Harvard and joined our team as a front-end developer. And she did quite a bit of work refactoring the front end and building out the features related to journals, which we'll look at. Leonore Colbert, another developer at Cast Iron, spent many days localizing the front end interface for Manifold. And then Alexa Gray, who's a senior backend developer at Cast Iron, rebuilt what was once the following mechanism in the API and turned it into what we now call collecting. She did extensive work on this release. So not everyone from the team is here today, but I wanted to just pause and mention that. All right, let's look at this. So there are kind of 2 main visible features in version 7. Maybe 3. One is journals, another is changes to reading groups, and the third one is changes to how content is collected by users in Manifold. And we'll start with journals and then look at the other 2 in a second. So for journals, I'm going to look at our Edge instance, and you'll see on the home page, we scroll down, there is now this fake journal here. It's called the Journal of Thought. So it's now possible to have kind of simple journal content in Manifold. The content is stored in this journal volume issue hierarchy that I think most of you are familiar with. The journal itself can be shown on the homepage, and there's also a journal's landing page where we list all of the journals that are set up on the instance. In the future, I think we'll make this more robust, so there's more ability to control like where journals appear. But in our first outing for this feature, they just they can't really be included in project collections yet, and they're a little bit constrained in where they show up. I'll drill down into this journal, and you'll see that it has like a hero image, the calls to action that you can do on projects currently, some descriptive text, and then the issues and volumes within the journal. Each volume has its own URL, and each issue has its own URL, and then there's some metadata about the journal itself. There's additional fields that can show up here. We just haven't fleshed it out for this sample journal. From here, I can drill down to an issue, and the issue is essentially a Manifold project, which you're familiar with. So you can do all the same things on the issue that you can do currently in a project. So on this one, you'll see that the individual articles are each added as a text. And in this case, they're kind of grouped into text categories. There's other ways you could do this. Of course, you could have the whole issue as one text and have each article be a chapter within that single text, and then show the table of contents here. But I think this is kind of the recommended way, where you treat each article as a text. I'll pop over to the back end so we can see what this looks like on the back end. So a couple new things. There's now on your dashboard a list of journals that your user has access to. And there's also a top level journals item here. We can drill down into one of these, and this should be a pretty familiar interface. It's similar to what you have with projects currently. And so we can, kind of set up the name of the journal, add some content about it. We can control, similar to on a project, what the background image is, the description, some display options. And then we have metadata, issues, and volumes. So here I can set up volumes, or I can remove an existing volume. And importantly, I can make issues. I can also link to the issues in this journal. So we'll look at that issue 1 that we were looking at on the front end. And now we're essentially in a project. Because this project is an issue, a couple things are different. The kind of backlink goes to the journal, and on the properties, there's a couple fields that are specific to journals, like the issue number, how we sort, and the number. Otherwise, this functions essentially as a project does in Manifold, with a couple like display exceptions on the front end, and we can add text to it, resources, resource collections, etc. And you can also assign, access to this particular issue, similar to how you can with projects in Manifold. So we're excited to see what people do with this. We don't have anyone, doing kind of real journal content yet, but I think there's movement in that direction at CUNY and perhaps at Minnesota. And so as we start to get, people using these features, I anticipate that we'll kind of sand off some rough edges and improve it in version 8, based on the feedback that we get. All right, the second feature is the ability to collect different kinds of content to your user collection or to a reading group. So you'll recall in earlier versions of Manifold, this kind of star here essentially was a toggle where I could say like this project was followed or not followed. and it was only applicable to projects. I couldn't kind of follow or collect a more granular piece of content. We've changed that in version 7 so that I can now not only add the project and not just add it to my collection, my starred we're calling it, but to a reading group that I'm a moderator of. And we'll look at that in a second. What this does is it allows an instructor, for example, to gather content on a particular manifold instance. This work came out of this NEH grant that's being run through CUNY, and the CUNY instance has a lot of OER resources that faculty members want to pull together kind of into a collection of course material. Previously, there was no way to really organize that content for the students, and so that's what this feature is trying to solve. If we drill down into one of these, you'll see, let's go into, you'll see that there's some new places where I can collect things. So I can collect individual texts in Manifold. I can also collect a resource now, and I can collect, if we go into like the reader, I can collect individual sections or chapters of a text that's in Manifold. So there's a lot more granularity around what can be collected. When I do this, these things will populate this My Starred page. And so here I can see the things that I've starred. And if I had starred other kinds of content, that would show up here as well. I mentioned that this also applies to reading groups. So we've made a number of changes to how reading groups work in Manifold. Here I've set up a private reading group, and I'll go into it. And you can see on the reading group landing page, there's some content from this Minnesota instance that I've collected to this reading group. So I have 4 projects here. I have 3 texts and then some specific text sections. And then down here, I have another bunch of content that I've put into, I should say, unit 2. We can change that into these different units. So the idea is that like the faculty member could, group content by topic or theme or whatever works for their course. As the moderator of this group, I can edit this page, and I'll just go ahead and collect this mistake that I made. So you can see how this works. And I can also kind of move content between these sections. When the member of the group logs in, then they'll see this as the homepage for the reading group. It's also possible to put markdown in these descriptions. So you could have like links to course material that's not on Manifold or to the Blackboard site or whatever makes sense for that, that particular case. We've built out the other pages as well here. So we've made it easier to kind of see how people are annotating the content in that group. We've added filters, so you can filter by the text and by the specific member. So if the instructor wants to see, like a specific student's annotations of a specific text, that's now possible. And we've made some changes to this members part. There's now some metadata on the membership itself. This is useful, for example, if you want to change what a certain group member's annotations look like. Like we could say that the professor's annotations are wavy or maybe they're dashed. We don't really like attach any kind of semantic meaning to these things, but the idea is that in a course you might have different kinds of users whose annotations need to stand out, but in relation to the students' annotations. And so that's what we're trying to support here. In the reader itself, let's kind of go back and let's look at the text section. There's a number of changes in the reader to support this. We've added the ability to kind of see in this notes view if the annotation is in a group, and also filter this list just for a certain group. This is useful if you're an instructor where all your students are annotating the same text and you want to be able to go in here and see, like who annotated what sections within my group and differentiate those annotations out from all of the annotations generally that are on that text. We have a see all view to support this with various filters to support the instructor. And let's see. We also have a corresponding view for the user. So if you're a user and you're annotating a bunch of text on the Minnesota instance, you now have this My Notes and Comments page where you can see all the annotations that you've left on all of the texts across that instance. All right. We've also exposed public reading groups on instances. This was a request that came out of CUNY where a lot of courses are using reading groups, and they wanted students to be able to kind of see these public groups and see which courses are using it currently and self-enroll in those reading groups. We've made some kind of more, I don't know, subtle changes to reading groups to support instructors who are using a reading group to teach semester after semester. So one thing we've done is made it so that a user can archive that reading group. This was we ran into situations where, you know, somebody would teach a class with Manifold, the teacher would annotate a text, and then the next semester would come and they didn't necessarily want the students to see all the previous courses annotations. And so now the instructor can archive that group, or a student can archive that group, so they won't see those past annotations for themselves. They can also duplicate it. And I think this is a really cool feature because the instructor can, like, if they're teaching the same text semester after semester, they can annotate the text, finish the class, and then clone that reading group for the next semester and just copy their own annotations over and the content that they've set up in the group. And then they have a fresh slate so that the students can come in and add their own feedback and their own annotations. So these are all features that were developed in, you know, consultation with various faculty members who have been using Manifold in the classroom to try to make it easier and kind of more streamlined and efficient for them. Okay. There's a couple things. Those are the kind of big visible features, changes to collections, journals, and changes to reading groups. There are a number of features that you aren't going to see in this release, but that are worth calling out, I think. One thing I want to mention is the work that was done on localization. The team basically went through the whole front end of Manifold and took out all of the hard-coded labels. Like anywhere there was English text, essentially, it was removed from code, from the view layer, and moved into these localized files. And so we can just look at one of these here. And you'll see that there's essentially a key and then the English string for each of these. And some cases, these are interpolated with variables, blah, blah, blah. So what this is the basis for being able to translate Manifold. In version 7, we aren't showing the language switcher because we only have English. But what we're going to do is look for help from the community to translate these JSON files into another language. And once we get a good set of translations, we will merge those into the core of Manifold. And at that point, it will be possible for a user to select a language preference on the front end and have their experience of Manifold be in a different language. This is just for the interface itself. It's not for content in Manifold. We're not tackling, you know, content localization at this point, which is its own giant can of worms. The other part of the work that was done on V7 was extensive refactoring. So, you know, one of the challenges on a project of this size is we're trying to constantly balance, you know, new features, building new things, and maintaining the platform, paying down technical debt, making sure that it's something that we can continue to build on, that the complexity doesn't get out of control, so that it's too hard, you know, eventually to make new features. So in every release, we have to, you know, pay down that debt and refactor. So one place where we felt Manifold was getting a little thorny was around its style sheets. And so the front end team did a ton of work to modernize our CSS. Many components were migrated to styled components, which gives us a more encapsulated approach to styles. Should we ever, I should rephrase that. We intend to make the kind of hidden plugin extensibility interfaces in Manifold more public at some point. And having the styles be closer to the components will make it easier for people to change the look and feel of Manifold when we do that. When we first built Manifold, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago now, React, which is the part of our front end framework, was relatively young. We used a kind of older approach to building components. Much of that has been rewritten or updated in version 7. We migrated many components from class components to modern functional components, and we replaced what's something called higher order components with hook-based approaches to side effects and whatnot. I know this is a little technical, but so much work went into this that I want to make sure it gets mentioned, even if I can't show it to you. And then I think the last thing we did was we improved how we fetch data from the API in Manifold, kind of rewrote parts of our data fetching subsystem, which I think will yield some efficiencies as we move into V8. So there it is. That so ends my razzle dazzle, as they call it. Thank you for bearing with me. We're excited to release this version. It's currently, I think we're on, let's see, V7 release candidate 6. This has been running on the really large CUNY instance for, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks. It's been on Minnesota maybe for 3 or 4 weeks. I think we have it on 6 or 7 pilot instances currently. There are 2 known bugs that I would like to see addressed before we finalize this release. They're kind of trickling in off these instances. I think we will, I would like to build the final V7 public packages before the end of July. This is a stable version at this point. If there's anybody who's hosting their instance with Manifold Digital Services and would like us to update it, I'm happy to initiate that at any time. I think you should just reach out to Terrence if you want that. Otherwise, it will roll out to all the instances once we, produce the public final V7 packages. But it is stable enough now and I think can go out to anyone who wants it. We also, last thing, and then I'll stop. We put a ton of work, as always, into the upgrade process. So there are many, many data migrations that happen in this version, to seamlessly move from our old following mechanism to our new collection mechanism. All of the data changes throughout the application. That's all automated. Like I said, we've updated maybe 7 or 8 instances so far. It has in every case been a smooth, fast, painless, 0 downtime upgrade. And I expect that will be the case with all of the instances. So this should not be a painful upgrade for anyone. And if it is, you should tell us and we'll figure out why and we will fix it. All right, that's it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Zach, and to all of your colleagues at Cast Iron for the work that went into this release. Does anyone have any questions for Zach? I think we can try just opening the floor if you have a question and you want to unmute yourself and ask it at this point, or if you prefer to use the hand raise function, that will work as well. Does anyone have any initial questions on OERs or journals or any of the V7 upgrades?
It is possible to use issues without volumes. The volume is optional on issues.
There's a question if there are any new features specific to books in this release.
I don't think so. Terrence, I don't know if you can, there may be smaller stuff, but I don't think there's any new, anything new that we've done that's specific to books.
Nothing is coming to mind.
Yeah. I think that I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm gonna. I think that our focus might for V8 will shift back toward the text itself. That's my hope. So we're still kind of figuring out our direction for V8, but I think there's some consensus that improving or simplifying ingestion is important. That making it possible to modify the ingested text in some ways is important, and perhaps providing mechanisms to put together a text that does not start with ingestion may also be important. These are the things we're kind of tossing around for V8. So David, I think you might look toward that version.
There's a question from Nils. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. First, thank you for this great presentation, and also the exciting features. Of course, as I mentioned already, chat localization for us is like super cool. There was a discussion some time ago already with respect to the GDPR issue that we have in Europe, and I just wanted to know if there are any new developments, because there's like we managed to get legal more or less into our boat, but there's like one really, really crucial thing, which is the registration. At the moment, we are forced to get requests by email, and then we have to create the account and send in the information, because there is no possibility to like have such a simple thing like I confirm to the terms of use, I confirm privacy notice when you register, so a click mechanism and so. And so since, of course, creating an account is a very, very central aspect, especially when we look at these exciting features, how to use it in the class, it would really interest me if there are any considerations with this respect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that solving that is definitely, I think I can say with certainty that will be in V8, if not like a V7 dot something release. It's very high on the list. We've done user experience design around that, not just like consent during login, but like, cookie consent and analytics and all that stuff. So we've done design work on that. We just haven't done the development, but it's a high priority. We have funding to do it, and it will be in the next version of Manifold.
Does anyone else have any questions for Zach before we move on to our next presentation?
There's one in chat. When will we start updating instances to V7? We can do it now if you want. Like I said, just reach out to Terrence if you would like to be on version 7 release candidate 6, which is what we're on now. I think it's fine to update. Otherwise, we'll do everyone automatically once we finalize V7, which I believe will be before the end of the month. Paywall. There is not one currently. You're talking about like the ability to, I presume you're talking about the ability to put the content in a Manifold project or an instance behind a paywall. There's a lot of discussion about this. I think there's some funding for this. We're trying to figure out the best approach for it. The whole entitlement system that we built was kind of the first step toward this, because we'd have a mechanism for saying, a specific user or a specific group has the ability to read the content in a specific project. And that's the basis for what would eventually be a paywall. That the way it works now isn't really scalable. You can't, it's hard to automate. You'd have to build your own API integration. we're trying to figure out a way to do this that will work for, you know, many institutions who all have like different payment gateways and different approaches to payment, but it is on our radar.
And Zach, I just want to confirm that the University of Minnesota has brought funding,
Right.
The startup funding for this feature.
Correct. Might be
All right.
like, it might be good just, you know, Susan, to kind of put it in the back of our minds, like as we do start engaging that work more seriously, like having some other people in the Manifold community who are interested in that feature, who we could just meet with and have conversations with, might lead us down a more informed path than if it's just Minnesota and you know, CIC figuring it out.
That sounds good. So I'll just put a call out to this group for those that are interested in this feature. If you want to reach out to me on Slack, I can add you to the list of potential, you know, community engaged people as we develop the feature.
Mm-hmm.